Good afternoon. Good afternoon. A warm welcome to all the attendees and panelists to the first day of the webinar series, Story of an Architect's Son. For this webinar series, we have invited a son sharing the experience of growing up with the ethos and ideologies of an architect father. This session seeks to reminisce about the journey of a small as two architects working together. This interactive chit chat between a father and a son is about looking back and sharing the growth of a child and a father with everyone. Also, in the development of his self esteem, personality, and confidence to have become an architect. So, at Road, we invite you to join us to celebrate this father son relationship and be a part of their beautiful journey. I request Shivani to introduce the speakers for today.
Uh, Thank you, Malika. I would like to take the opportunity to introduce you to our today's speakers. Architect Vikas Bhandari. He studied architecture at BKPS College of Architecture, Pune. He further went to attend extension course in housing in urban development conducted by University College in London. He started his own practice in 1975, soon after completing his education. Architect Vikas Bhandari is passionate about teaching, has been contributing to the field of education since 1982, and continues to do so even today. He is the member of ASA and has been a part of member of technical group Pimpri Chinchwad Development Plan, director of MADA, member of steering committee, Development Plan Pune, actively involved with the Council of Architecture on numerous fronts to improve the quality of education offered. His son, Vikas Bhandari, used to spend a lot of time with his father in his studio growing up. Having seen and heard a lot about architecture from a very young age prompted him to take up architecture as a profession. He completed his architecture from College of Architecture, Pune in 1998 and joined the practice immediately after his graduation. After working for 11 years, he went to study further at the Bartlett School of Architecture, University of London. Along with architecture, he is passionate about traveling and high altitude mountaineering. Uh, Now I request the speakers to commence today's discussion. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Hello. Hello everyone.
Hi Kalpak.
Hi. Are we audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Kushuru, you must have seen the poster where Kalpak is on tiptoe and I am sitting and I am relaxing. So the major part of today's program is up to him. He has to do a lot of talking and I will be just listening. That's okay. I think I'll go back to when I was a kid.
Sure, of course.
I used to spend a lot of time.
We'll include you in the conversation as well. Don't worry.
So as a kid, I used to spend a lot of time in the office. I used to keep wondering what are these people doing on those large boards and drawing the whole day in, day out. Someone who has been with the office, one Mr. Krishna, he used to take me to the park almost every day while I was at the office. Some sort of an entertainment for me rather than being in the office then. Vishnu, can you hear me? Are we there? We lost.
Kalpak,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to not, I'm going to log in again, but you please continue. I'll log in again. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So having spent a lot of time at the office, that probably was one of the reasons when I used to think, what are these people drawing and doing the whole day? Uh, Also, the fact that I have these genes probably had a big part in me eventually deciding to take up architecture. As a kid, I was also fascinated by the civil services and the armed forces. I today also, when I hear jets flying, that part in me still comes alive. So, had I not been an architect, probably being in the forces would have been something else I would have considered. In fact, I even went to give the entrance exam, but spending 5 minutes at the table with the paper in front of me, I don't know, something just happened and I just walked out and I thought that maybe this is not the right calling for me. I don't know what happened then. Uh, yeah, so, and ours was the first batch when centralized admissions were introduced. The concept of free seats and paid seats was introduced for the first time. In the whole process, I think there was about 6, 7 months delay. Having come back to Pune with the intention of not joining the forces, I think the best next option was probably give the entrance exam. So that's how I went for the entrance exam. Prior to that, I had given an aptitude test, which Dad asked me to do at Nyan Prabodhini. Architecture did come up there as a career option for me. Yeah, so that's how I joined architecture. During that time, there were two colleges in Pune. One was Abhinav, and the other was College of Architecture. Dad was teaching at Abhinav, so he very clearly gave me two options. Either you join Abhinav and I stop teaching, or you join and I continue teaching. The option was very clear. I joined MMCA. No regrets as of now. Yeah, so that's how I began my journey into architecture. I don't know what he felt about the whole thing. So today's session, I'm going to ask a few questions to him as well, probably for the first time, which the answers to which I will get to know while you get to know as well. Were you happy me joining MMCA or?
No regrets because uh, you did the right thing because teaching was my passion. Had you decided to join BKPS, then I would have taken a break of 5 years. So you allowed me to continue with my passion, and you ultimately in architecture. I'm not trying to compare any college to any college, but it is the individuality. It is the own thinking process. It is how hard you work decides what kind of architect you are. So whether you had joined BKPS or MMCA, it would have really made no difference at all. Your take.
Yeah, my early days of college, because I was going to office as a kid also. Some of the professors who were teaching at MMCA happened to be his students and my professors. So initially that felt kind of little awkward to me. Uh, I wouldn't say it was awkward, but it was a different feeling for me. So the pressure of being an architect's son played on my mind since the very beginning, till a point. Beyond a point, I don't think it really made too much of a difference to me in college. But yeah, it did play some part in putting pressure on me, let's say, to perform, to do good at whatever I was doing.
Uh, Also, as a student then and with an architect at home, I always used to wonder at times, why does he never look into what I'm doing? Probably he was, but he never really commented or told me as to what one should do and how one should do. So there were times when I used to think, why is he not looking into it? But when I look back, I realize and I understand, knowing him as a person, that he was just being himself. Did you ever feel like, did you control yourself or what was it about?
The issue is you have a professors in college, you have some kind of a dialogue. And if I continue a dialogue at home, and maybe the things are contradictory, one. And then more support you give to a creeper, the creeper keeps on asking for the support. So my idea was to leave it to you. You take your decision, you do your efforts, and you grow yourself.
So yeah, in my fourth year, when one has to undergo internship, he was very keen that I go out and work at some other studio. So yeah, I did go to one studio in Ahmedabad. I will keep all the names out of this conversation, the entire one. I will not name anything or anyone for that matter. So yeah, with the idea of doing a 4-month internship, I did go to Ahmedabad, but I did come back after 8 days. I will admit that. Those 8 days taught me one thing: how should interns be treated, and how or what do interns really look forward, and what is it that they really don't want to do. I was in a completely new city. I used to spend a lot of time preparing tea for everyone, ammonia prints for the entire office, whatever load was there. I had no issues doing that. Along with that, I would have enjoyed a little more work, uh, architectural work, a little more interaction with the principals or even the seniors, which unfortunately in those 7 days I didn't get too much. So I decided I should be back. So once I was back, he said, okay, you're not still joining our office. I will make sure you go to some other office in Pune. That's when this one office I will name, I joined architect Kirit Vora at Kipa Architects. It was a great experience for me. Uh, so while I was working there, I'm sure interns do get a certain profile of work, and while I enjoyed the whole culture over there, at the same time, I was also knowing what kind of projects were going back in his office then. So yes, I always was a little inclined to come back and work with him. So I requested after 2 months that please allow me, let me come back and be a part of his office then, which he did agree. Yeah, those 2 months in this office, of course, I had a few seniors of mine from MMCA who were working with him then. Uh, so yeah, those 2 months which I did in Kiba and 2 months I did with him, that was my internship period. I don't know if that was the right thing to do to switch, but yes, that gave me a little more exposure to what was happening and how things were done in different offices. Kirit Voda then had moved to Pune after a 25-year stint in LA, I think. So the softwares that he was working on then and the methodology and the systems that were employed were different compared to what we were using then. One more thing I would like to mention over here, while I was in college and being fortunate to be his son, I think his office was one of the first offices to be computerized. I remember he even added a loft kind of a space in the office just to house the computers, and he was at it the whole time. I remember him writing Lisp routines to customize and to make the software more user friendly and to function the way he wanted. So that was an introduction to computers pretty early into my architectural practice. So I used to work on computers right from my second year or third year. I have to mention this, that most of my design submissions, I used to work on computers and take printouts and discuss with the internal teachers and all. There was one incident in the final year Viva. The external examiners realized that the drawings were done on computer and these are printouts, and so they kind of took an objection to the same, and my result for the design paper was withheld, and the whole thing was sent to Pune University for them to take a call. Those 4 5 months I have seen him very restless, and that was one long battle which he had to fight with the board of studies and with the vice chancellor, and he had to plead my case. And so that was one episode where I saw him very restless. Anything you want to add, please? I think he is one of the reasons why computers were made compulsory the following year in all the colleges. So I think credit for introduction of computers in colleges, I think goes to him to a certain extent. Because if you didn't know computers and if you had to get out in the field, it would have been very difficult. I mean, it is difficult. Looking at the future, computers were a necessity then. So yeah, I think you should speak something about it.
There was a very nice and forward-looking Vice Chancellor, Arun Nigwekar. I went and met him, and I told him that when we are talking of catching up the world, and we are keeping the technology away from the students, is this a way we can go forward? He understood my point and immediately rang up the Dean of Engineering Faculty, Mr. Dulkumwar, and asked Kumar to investigate the matter and take the right decision. And coincidentally, he was also a progressive dean of the engineering college. And then he immediately appointed one, I will name the person, Vaikund Sardesai, as a special examiner for Kalpak and one more kid. And and from that day onwards, and this issue probably went right up to Council of Architecture, because immediately the next year in minimum standards of education and the requirement list, the computers start appearing, and they insisted that every institute must have so many computers, so many softwares, all that. So actually, credit of computerization, I will not take myself. I will give it to Kalpak, because Kalpak, so many other friends in the college also were using computers, but they were doing glass tracing, while Kalpak did not do that. And Kalpak took out the prints and submitted. So he could have also cheated by doing glass tracing, but he did not. And he took a right stand that what I have done is what I have done. And that was a great experience and great response from the authorities who were, and coincidentally, I was lucky. I succeeded in this battle because there were progressive people who were sitting at the decision-making tables.
Yeah, but had it not been you, had it not been all those people, probably I wouldn't be.
Well, this is kind of a fate everyone has to go through at various times. Your fate was good that time.
Yeah, so after I joined the office soon after graduating. I was always of the opinion that I should gain 2 3 years of experience before I go out and study further. But I was learning so much in office each day, I didn't realize how 10 years passed. Uh, so yeah, after 10 years, there came a point where everything a lot of things to an extent had become a little more mechanical for me. So I was not happy with the thought process and the way I was thinking and the way I was working on projects. So that's the time. And he also said that I'm getting a little tired as well. So if you really want to study further, this is the time, this is the year. Please take that call. Otherwise, later on, it will be very difficult for you and for me as well. So yeah, since he was there and he was supportive, uh, I said, okay, let me apply and see. Uh, I could not study for GRE. I didn't have the temperament while I was working full time to go back, study for GRE. And it had been 10 years already since the last I had studied. So yeah, the obvious option was to look at non-GRE as in non-US. UK was on my list because of two reasons. Non-GRE was one, plus it's more integrated and it's easier to travel Europe from London. So yeah, I did apply to just two colleges. One was the AA, Architectural Association, and the other was the Bartlett School of Architecture at University College London. After hearing from both of these colleges, I said, okay, now is the time that if I really decide to go, which is only a month away, I need to have a visa. So I said, okay, let me at least apply for the visa. And once I get the visa, I will take a call whether I'm going or not. So so I was still very indecisive till that moment. The day I got my visa was the time to take the call. So that was the day when I decided that I will go and study further. I had 7 days before I had to reach the college for the orientation day, and I was off in 7 days. Fortunately, I could do that because he was here. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for me to take that decision. Of course, the staff who was working with us was also very supportive because I remember a lot of projects that I was working on. Some of the clients I informed when I reached London that, okay, this is the scenario. I'm here to study further. It's a 12 months course. One of the reasons, again, why I chose Bartlett was because it was a 12-month course, whereas the AA DRL course, which I was looking at as an option, was a 16-month course. So yeah, that was one more reason why I chose the Bartlett for a shorter duration. Yeah, and having gone back to college after 11 years was not easy, was very tough because on one hand, you've been working in a comparatively conventional way of practicing architecture, I would say, and what was being taught out there was very, very radical, and the methodology was different. There's a lot of research-oriented stuff which we are not used to over here. So the shift was a little difficult to begin with. Yeah, but all in all, the whole experience was great. I'm sure he must have gone through a tough time during that 1 year over here. What's your take on that?
My staff supported me and we could take on because some of the projects which Kalpak was working and they were halfway, they were also competently handled by my team. So we had no difficult time.
Yeah. Another thing I would like to say here is one thing that I've learned from him, I'm still trying to learn, is once you take a decision, once you go ahead, never hesitate to go back and revisit your own decisions. That is something that he has been doing on and off, and I have seen my seniors who were with him go through that exercise day in, day out. I remember whenever they used to enter the office in the morning, they used to be scared that now sir will ask to change the whole thing and restart. And that in one particular project, that did happen so many times. He's a perfectionist. That difference is there between him and me slightly. Of course, I'm trying to learn. I'm still trying to learn. I'm sure if the person is watching this, he would know who I am referring to. This was Sai Radhe project, Amit. So every day he used to come up and say, okay, now we need to draft with a 8-meter grid. After having worked on this was for a large commercial development, about 2.5 lakh square feet of an office, retail and office building in 2002, around 2002 and 3, yeah. Yeah, so 8-meter grid, all the floor plans are drafted, and then he would say, okay, scrap 8 meter, 8 meter is not working, let's try 8.1. And then eventually, I think after months of this exercise, it was decided to follow a 8.2 by 8.2 meter grid. So while I was seeing this exercise, I understood the importance of grid, structure, structural knowledge, structural clarity, detailing. One of my classmates who was working with us then, I remember he was working on the toilets for that particular project, and I think he was working on it for about 2 months. Until he was satisfied, I don't think he did anything else but just worked on the toilet layouts. Yeah, so at times I used to think how much time are you going to spend on this one thing or revisiting our own decisions, which also work fine. But yeah, that's the perfectionist that he is. At times, with some clients, I had to do a balancing act, I feel, because clients are always in a rush and always in a hurry. And I knew him. So yeah, to balance was my role. At times he was unhappy, at times the clients were unhappy. But yeah, I think we got through somehow with most of them. This also, I'm sure he would know few clients who I'm referring to. What is your take on visiting, revisiting, how much time you should spend?
This goes back to my childhood. I was staying in a house which was made out of a tin, and there were holes in the roof. And I still remember my childhood rainy days. We used to take a piece of soap and plug those holes. So I know the value of the house. So whenever I'm designing something, I try to ensure that whatever money that gentleman, that owner is putting in, there is a correct justice. And till that time, your mind says, yes, this is the thing, then you can't be sure that you have given a justice to your client who has come to you with the faith. So, and that led to maybe a revisiting. But that revisiting was much more in early period. And then you develop your philosophy, you develop your ideas, you ferment your ideas that I want toilets like this. And then that revisiting goes on reducing. So every architect probably in his life will have to go through this. I went through it. Probably now it's your turn to go through it.
Yeah, so one thing I've learned over here from him is that developers, or when I'm talking about developer projects, developer is a medium, but you are actually designing for the end user who would eventually occupy the house. So the end user was more important, and he is kept as the primary person that one is designing for, and the developer is just a way or a medium through which you are designing for the end user. So in our practice, in whatever I learned from him, is no compromise when it comes to functionality. Aesthetics is important, but not at the cost of functionality. And come what may, there are certain things that he would never compromise on, irrespective of whether the developer is happy or not, whether he comes back to us again or not. He stayed true, and I have seen a lot of people not come back to us. Some people don't even consider us, but we are okay as long as the conscience says that we've done and given the best that we could. Once that conscious is clear, it makes things slightly simpler. Again, as far as one more thing I would like to say is, as far as commercials are concerned, he, for a long, long time, does not look into commercials. He did not, I think, since 2005 or 6, he stopped looking into the commercial aspect of the practice. Very early on, I was fortunate to learn about the commercial aspect. I will not name them, but few large names from Pune, once they had all the details and drawings that were required from us, since he was never particular about asking for fees at the right time, when the project was done, they simply said, okay, we don't need to pay you. In other ways, they found ways and means to raise issues so that they don't have to pay us. I thank those three people who very early on in my practice, I think we saw a big loss. I would say it was a loss, but it was a learning to be a little more careful in terms of dealings, in terms of timelines, in terms of deliverables, in terms of what we need to ask from them. I'm sure he feels that I am one end of the pendulum while he's the other. But I think everyone at some point needs to find a balance where nothing is disturbed.
Correct. Correct. Kalpa is trying to perfect something which I had failed. But
It was a learning.
Kalpa, thankfully, even in those situations where half my clients did not pay me, God was great and He took care of us.
But to a certain level, we need to also take care of ourselves. Let us not leave everything to God.
Should we give it to Kushal? But do you want to add something?
I don't know. You want to add something, you can add.
Kushal, is it enough? And you want to take over?
I'm thoroughly enjoying listening to y'all. So
Yeah,
if
you
y'all
can
want,
ask a few questions if you feel like, and if you have any.
sure. I mean, I'm making notes. I have some. I'm definitely have stuff that we can talk about. Uh, if you want to continue, you can. Otherwise, we can have a conversation maybe, and then we can take questions from the audience as well.
Khushru, you can start asking the questions, and as the things progress, if I feel like I want to interfere, I will tell
Sure.
you that. Now give me the chance.
Sure. To me, I would actually like to start at the beginning for you, sir, where I would be interested in understanding a little bit about your childhood. What was your family like, and where did you grow up, and so tell us a little bit about that phase of your life.
I come from a very small place. That was a very small place then. Now it's reasonably developed. It's a place called Koregaon. It is about 15 kilometers from Satara.
Mm.
And I come from that way a poor family then. My father was a very hardworking person. Even when he was in college, he used to teach his juniors and earn out of it, and that is how he completed his education. And I still see what kind of efforts, I remember what kind of efforts he was taking, and that also shaped me. Because till I was in 10th, I used to walk barefoot to my school on a asphalt road about 2 kilometers away from my house. And that is the kind of you can say it is a kind of a training one has to go through. The reason I said we used to redo the plans goes back to that period, because what is the value of money, and when people spend that money, whether they should get comfort, because that's so to stop the water in the house, and the hardship that you face through growing up really tells you the value of money. So after 10th, I shifted to Satara. Then I did my pre-degree and FY. And then I joined architecture because at that time, engineering admissions were more difficult. Medical admissions were simple in that period. And I could not get admission to engineering. That's how I landed into architecture.
What were those early years at BKPS like?
BKPS was good, but I lost 1 year in BKPS, and it was out of an inferiority complex. I came from a small place. My dresses, my mannerism, my English was not matching to what other students in the college was. And that developed an inferiority complex. So I lost 1 complete year in overcoming that inferiority complex. And BKPS then was a kind of a school, I will say. And architecture colleges are really schools, because School of Architecture is what terminology we use. So BKPS was then a school, and probably even today it is something like a school. I will not call it atmosphere-wise, I will not call it a college atmosphere. And that's good one way.
What was, do you have any memories of certain professors of yours or teachers of that time?
I have memories of Vaikunth Sardesai. Then there was one more senior professor, Punlik, and great professors. And then Palshikar, a devoted professor who probably neglected his practice for teaching. And I will tell you one incident. When I lost this first year and I was in second year, and there was that habit of bunking the college, which I got in first year, continued in second year. And then there was a turning point. Some project was given to us, and somehow some idea clicked me. And in the same week, I made a simple sketch and showed it to Palshikar sir. And Palshikar sir changed the direction of my thinking, because he immediately called the entire class together. And the first one sentence he did, ये कितना गधा है देखो, भगवान ने इसको इतनी अकल दी है और इस्तेमाल नहीं कर रहा है. And that is how he appreciated my design. And that completely changed my life thereafter. That gave me the confidence. So the kind of inferiority complex which was there with me since having come from a rural area immediately vanished, because the mind started telling, I have some additional capacity than others. And thereafter, I never looked back. And God's grace, God has given me a good memory. It's nothing of mine, it is His doing. Because whenever I attended this college, and whatever I listened, everything I used to always remember, I never forget. So Pudlik sir, being a part of the old school, had a habit of asking questions. So his 45 minutes lecture, first 10 minutes used to be asking what we did last week. So he used to ask the questions. And then whoever is not able to answer has to compulsory stand. And that is how the class used to progress. But when he used to come to me, having realized that this boy understands everything, he used to skip me and go further. And when except me, the rest of the entire class is up, then the question used to come to me. And if I also failed, then he used to say, you are all excused because even he doesn't remember. And this is the way his teaching was.
Those
And
are
that
great
was
memories.
great memories. And I tell you, again, some good memories and bad memories. Some of the professors used to come with the notebook which they had written when they were in JJ. And they used to start reading it, and we were expected to write it down. And that used to be 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Very hot climate, fans not working. And then I used to think, if I have to just copy this, then why not copy it? Copy when the climate is cool. I can borrow somebody's notebook and simply take it down. So I used to bunk and go to Alcott office, where there were good fans and good movies. So my attendance used to be very bad. And final year, since my attendance was very bad, there was a notice on the board that following students have been not given form to appear the exams, and my name was on at the top because I was the lowest in attendance. So what to do? So in that time, Pundlik sir was principal, and but though he was principal, most of the things were being handled by Sir Desai sir. So I went to Sir Desai sir, and I explained him the situation. I completely told him frankly why my attendance is. And then I said, sir, now I give you an offer. Either you give me a guarantee that whoever you have given a form, all will pass. Or I make an offer that let me appear, and if I fail, I give a guarantee that I will give up architecture and not appear again. And then he said, it was a great challenge for him also. He understood, but he had understood why my attendance was less. And then he said, go somewhere and get a medical certificate. Unless you come with a medical certificate, I can't allow you to. I went to a doctor friend, and he said, yesterday you were present. Today you are absent. 3 days again you are present. Again you are 4 days absent. What kind of a illness I can write? He thought for a while, and he said chronic diarrhea. And that is how he gave me the certificate. With certificate, I gave it to Sir Desai sir. I appeared, and then I'm proud to say that I stood first.
That certificate needs to be put with your BArch certificate also on a wall, framed.
And Khushru, since that day, Sir Desai has been my mentor, and we became good friends. Because after I passed out in 75, that time only BKBS being only college, unless you have been in practice for 15, 20 years, no college used to, college never invited you to teach. But I was invited to college straight 1980, 5 years of practice, and I was invited to college. And that was because probably Sir Desai understood what I can do or how sincere I am. And since that time, we have been good friends. And so much so that if I, even after Sir Desai retired and he was old, if I never did not go to him for 15 days, he used to feel restless. And he used to say, "Kyun aaya nahi?" So every month, 2 or 3 times I used to go and visit him. And that is a kind of a recognition what that person is, person was. So there is three teachers contributed in my journey.
Yeah, that's wonderful. But also that you took the effort to regularly keep in touch with him and meet him. So that also
Yes.
that's also important.
Even today, some of my teacher now, not many are now alive, but I make it a point that on Guru Purnima day, I go to at least one teacher, and wherever I don't go, I ring them up. So I still only about a year back I went to Sule. He is not keeping well. He is not able to walk, but I went and met him. I keep on talking to Badwe sir. Now, next 15 days, I intend to go to and meet Thorat sir. But Thorat sir, I was told, doesn't like to meet people. He's psychologically
Yeah.
is not happy, but I'm trying to go and meet him.
Wonderful, wonderful. So after college, I understand that you started your practice almost immediately. Is that right? Or did you work with somebody?
In fact, I started my practice even before passing, because when I was in third year, I had started doing some interior jobs. And that one memory is also interesting. I was doing something in Srigonda. Srigonda is a place near Ahmad Nagar. I was doing interior. So after the exam paper, I used to get into 2 o'clock, afternoon 2 o'clock bus and go to Srigonda and get night 2 o'clock train to come back to Pune. And immediately next day, same day appear for the paper. Once the train came late, and Gokhale sir was in charge of examination. But Gokhale sir knew that I am doing something in Srigonda, because my earlier trip, we were together because Gokhale sir was doing some bank building there and we had traveled together. So I told sir, कि sir, मैं कल रात को श्रीगोंदा गया था and train came late. So our rule says nobody can enter the examination hall more than 10 minutes late. I was 30 minutes late, but he condoned me because he knew that I must really travel to Srigonda and I was allowed there. So third year onwards, I started doing my interior works, and that also gave me a good, great confidence.
And so what was those first you mentioned those first 5 years from 1975 to 1980. What was the years of your practice like? What kind of projects were you working on? How did you start your practice? And what about, and when did you start when did you get married, and how did that family life of yours begin in Pune?
I started, when I started practicing my own native place, there were our family friends and they wanted to build 5 bungalows for 5 brothers. That was the first job. And it was a challenging job, and we had a very competent structural designer with us, because that site was very close to river. And foundation was all black cotton, dig, and still black cotton. So with all those 5 bungalows we raised our foundations on black cotton, and there was a good structural designer, A.J. Bhayani, and we did calculations together. We ensured that if the black cotton has equal amount of burden over it, and the black cotton qualities, titanium oxide by using lime, and all those experiments, and coincidentally those bungalows are very good, in good condition. And that Bhayani also gave me a confidence, because the porch of those bungalows, which is a room itself projecting out, that cantilever, that period we had done a 13 feet cantilever. Entire 13 feet room is projecting out as a tube, and that design was done by Bhayani, and so that was the first jobs. Then coincidentally, I met one gentleman, a great gentleman from Ahmednagar, through a common friend here. And he had a textile shop. Even that shop today is there. It's named Koinur. It's the largest shop in Ahmednagar. And his brief was very interesting. That after marriage season, I want to pull down this building. And the new building should be ready for Dasera. So which is 3.5 months period. And I took that challenge, and I used to be in office till 6. At 6 o'clock, leave the office, get into a large dabba, going to Ahmednagar, reach Ahmednagar at 10, work there on the side with the team, start back by 2 o'clock bus, come to house, get ready and be back in the office at 9. And that is how I lived for 3 months. 3 months every day, every night I was in Ahmednagar. And we could complete that 7-story building with 20,000 square feet, including interior. We delivered it on Dasera. And that was a tremendous experience, and that gave me confidence in construction. Today, any construction you talk to me, I will talk confidently, and I will say I can do it or not do it. And that gentleman has a huge contribution in my career, because without having seen what I have done, only on a word of a friend, he agreed to give me that kind of opportunity. Now, to Kalpak. I think it's
Sure.
enough of mine.
We don't have so many interesting stories. You have more interesting stories.
Surely. I think we can take a few questions from Kalpak now. Kalpak, so one thing that comes to mind is what were some of the challenges that you faced when you started working in your father's practice? What were those early days like? Did you feel like you had to prove yourself, or what were some of those? Did you feel what was going through your mind, or what were those experiences like in the early?
Shuru, here I will interrupt for 5 minutes, 5 sentences. For 5 years of early period, Kalpak was like one more assistant. He was sitting in the studio with others. He was offered no cabin. And when he matured up to a certain level, then he got a cabin of his.
Yeah, so for me, each day was a day of learning, and I never thought anything beyond that, as in I'm his son or whatever. So I was just out there learning, and there was so much to learn. The only focus was to learn and try and get as much as I could. All these thoughts about being his son and being the principal architects and all those things never did cross my mind till a long time. And a lot of times, the people who were working with us, they were my seniors. So I was a junior at every given point of time. For a long time, I was a junior in the office. So, yeah, in terms of challenge, or not really. In the initial times, no. Later on, when he said after 5 years, he got his own space, that's the time when that responsibility did start coming in. The challenges of that were more, or that was the challenge rather than the earlier times when you were just one more of them trying to learn as much as you can.
Was there a kind of a turning point for you, or moment for you when you were working on something and you felt, okay, now I feel confident enough to handle something on my own? Or what was the, was there something like that? Was there a project that you felt, or did your father feel that now, okay, Kalpak, you can take, and I will just step back a little bit?
Whether he felt that he has to answer, I still feel I'm still learning.
Khushbu, I will answer this. Today I am 75. So a time came when all my clients, one by one, they started retiring. They gave it to the next generation. And in the same period, simultaneously, Kalpak's friendship and clientele was increasing. So slowly, it really gradually happened. So because in our practice, the projects come by relation and by performance. So all my contemporary colleagues, they are completely retired. Probably I am the only exception who is trying to work. and Kalpak's friends are encouraged. So gradual, this really happened very smooth, gradual transition. There was no point which we can look at where this is the point where I stopped and he took it over. This gradually happened.
Kalpak, what about you? When did you I think there's always a particular moment in and they feel, okay, you know, I feel more confident about what I'm doing. I feel more settled, whichever way you call it. Was there a particular moment or a particular project that you felt, now I'm feeling confident enough to take this forward?
So I think confidence increases with each project, yeah, each experience and each project. So I wouldn't say it was one particular defining project or anything. If you're learning every day, I mean, there's learning out of everything. Each day actually teaches you. Sometimes it could be a experience at the site. Sometimes it could be uh, a labor, let's say a carpenter who's teaching you things. At times it could be a site supervisor who's teaching you things. At times you just learn out of observation. At times you realize something that you've done in the past, you look at it differently and then you realize, okay, this could have been done in a better way or a different way. So there's learning out of everything. Everything that you see, everything that you think, everything that, it's just that you just need to keep thinking and keep observing. I I would find it difficult to pinpoint that, okay, this particular project or this particular thing was a defining moment. I find it difficult to address it that way.
And did you, you mentioned that you spent a lot of time visiting sites with your father as you were growing up, as you were, even when you were studying, you would be part of the office. So was it conclusion in your mind, in a sense, that you would study architecture or
No. I don't know
continue
why I
your
used to
father's work? Or
no, it wasn't. It wasn't because out of that decision that I want to be an architect. He would probably know better because I think it was just him and mom. And I remember when our bungalow was being done in Abhimanchu, I remember sitting on the Luna behind mom and going to supervise the site. But the dynamics at home is something that he would. The reason why I was so much in office is something that he would answer.
So at that time, I was doing a lot of projects in Ahmednagar. So every Wednesday and Sunday, I used to travel to Ahmednagar and I had a Fiat and no driver because to afford a Fiat itself was a great thing for me. And going alone, I used to always get tired. So on Sunday trips, I used to bribe him. आते समय सरस्वती में भेल खाएंगे. And when he was in when he was in 6th, तब से मैं उसको गाड़ी के मेरे बाजू में बिठा के अहमदनगर लेके जाता था. And not that he did something great there. Maybe that observation must be keeping happening. So maybe 2-3 years, all Sundays, his half Sundays, I have visited his Sundays in Ahmednagar. And then that time I was doing a lot many bungalows in Abhimanchi, and even my bungalow was under construction. And I had no time to really spend for my own house. So my wife supported it. Though she is not an architect, not an engineer, simple housewife, but every day 3 hours on that old Luna, she used to go and sit with the team, and that is how she got the house completed. Otherwise, my house would have taken a year more. And she was a taskmaster, yes.
And also because an architect never has time to build his own house.
And very difficult also to design your own.
And you have all sort of ideas, and in your own house, all ideas to come and grace that house, which is very difficult, and there is always a confusion. So in my house also I went through that. That time there was Vandana Sethi as my assistant. So at one stage I told Vandana, we have taken it up to this point. Now if we continue doing it, probably we will not begin. So now you finish the working drawings. And that is how my house has happened.
So on that note, is there a particular have
if
you
you happen
do
to
you
build
are you
your
fond
house,
of a particular type of project?
which
Sorry, can you hear me?
Sorry.
To say that again.
No, my question is there you've worked on so many different types of projects over the years. So do you have a particular fondness or like particular type of project, or do you like all of them in the same way?
No,
Do you enjoy doing all of them in a similar way?
I enjoy doing it, all of them in same way. In fact, in my career, I have done only one industrial project, and that happens to be the largest foundry in Asia. We did it in Talegaon, and that was the first time, and which was only about 7-8 years back. And we enjoyed doing it also. Only one industrial project I did, and we enjoyed. So all projects, basically, when you design and see the design happening on the ground and getting materialized, that's an enjoyment. So I enjoyed all the projects. And some projects were halfway because of client's contribution. I realized I'm not enjoying. I said goodbye. So I just given up those projects at that stage, because we try to do something, and at certain stage client starts to interfere and spoil your design. Instead of continue with that torture, best way is to say goodbye. And client is also happy because he has got all the drawings with half the fees.
Yeah. There's a question actually from one of the audience. So it says that you Vikasa, you were part of the PCMC. So what was it at, and how have you managed to combine work, urban design work at PCMC with your practice?
Yeah, PCMC, I was a part of the technical group, and meetings of technical group used to be once in 15 days. And 2 days before agenda used to come. So you know what are the issues you have to look into it. And I was basically looking into road infrastructure. I concentrated on that, and today I proudly say that that team of ours, which did the PCMC DP in 1995, has a right to take credit of better road infrastructure in PCMC. And coincidentally, there was also a good team of politicians, because on the first day when we started doing it, there was one gentleman, Mama Pimple, a completely, absolutely uneducated person, but he was chairman of PCNTDA. He, on the day one, said, "Sahib, आम्हाला यातलं काही कळत नाही. पण आपल्याला आपलं गाव चांगलं करायचंय. तुम्हाला काय मदत लागेल, अडचण आली तर मी आहे." And he really stood with us, because that road, which Akurdi road, from Akurdi to going to airport, eventually Logao airport, and we just traveled right up to Nasik road now. We marked it 90-meter road. And then all corporators were against us. 90-meter road, इतना कभी रास्ता लगता है क्या? घर करेंगे या खाली रास्ते करेंगे? And this is a kind of a dialogue used to happen. But that Mama Pimple stood with us. And today, you must have seen from Akurdi, starting from Akurdi and going up to Nasik road, that road has become 90-meter wide. And the road beyond that, the work is going on. So eventually, PCMC will have a much, much better connection with Loga. So that was the only role. And I never looked into reservations in this, because from the day one I had said I have no interest in a reservation and all that. You look into it, I will look after only road network. And we really created wide roads by standards of thinking on that time frame. And even the road passing through the old Bombay Pune Road, what you say, where there are great separators and all that, and today now metro lines. All this is happening and became possible because of the width. If we had no width, then everything would have been difficult.
Kalpak, I'll come to you. A couple of thoughts here.
Yeah.
What really led you to think it's been 10 years of practice? Let me take a break and sort of, go and spend a year away and look back at things. Look at studying again. What
So they were,
thought
as I said
when you were doing
earlier,
that?
I always wanted to study, of course, after 2, 3 years of gaining experience. But unfortunately, as I said, I was learning so much over here and I didn't realize that 10 years had passed. And then there came a point in the practice where everything had become a little more mechanical and more of an arithmetic. You get a project, you know the potential and you know the size of the apartments. And so it was a mathematical calculation. I mean, I realized that I was not going beyond that or beyond whatever I was normally or so I felt a little stagnated at that point of time. And he also said that, okay, if you are serious about going and studying further, please do so soon because I don't know if I would be able to handle the whole thing after a few years if you decide to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, all these things put together and the fact that I applied and got through was a catalyst. So yeah, that's how.
And you're also an avid traveler, and I've seen pictures of you on these mountains in snow gear, and you know, um, so tell us a little bit about that. What is this passion of yours, and um, how has it influenced your architecture, your thought about work? How is that added to you as a person?
I've always been an avid sportsman from school days. But I admit that the day I joined architecture, I don't know, somehow the active lifestyle that I led prior to that, somehow I had taken a backseat. Right till 2009. 2009 is when I went to London. I spent a year over there. And post marriage, I was putting on a kilo each year. And 2009 is when I went to London, and there you need to walk a lot. Yeah. I mean, I chose a house which was far away from UNIV because my wife and kid also joined me over there. And so being a little far away, the tube station being far away, because we wanted a certain kind of house. So we had a house with a front and rear garden opening into a community green with a stream where fishing and in winters there was sledging. So we kind of liked that. So we chose that destination. So that involved a lot of walking, at least 20-minute walk to the tube station, a 30-minute tube ride, and then another 15-minute walk to the UNIV, and the whole day you're just walking, yeah. So yeah, I saw my weight come down from 82 to 71, and that felt good, yeah. So yeah, I remembered the earlier times when I was very, very active. So once I came back to India, I don't know why, prior to that, I decided to buy trekking gear. I had no clue. I had not climbed Siagat till then. I got my gear, and one fine day, my brother-in-law calls and says, "Okay, I want to buy either of the 3 jackets, and I don't know which one to buy." And I read the specs, and they were like tri-climate jackets meant for sub-zero temperatures. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going for a trek to Nepal." And me and him are very close. So I said, "Either buy 2 or you don't buy any." He said, "No, I've already booked way back and I don't know too many people. I just know one person and I don't know if I can get you on board." I said, "Yeah, simple, then don't buy any other." So he spoke to them, and the next day he calls me saying, "Okay, now you choose 2. I will get one for you and one for me." So I actually went there as a holiday, not knowing what it involved. I had a bit of gear. And yeah, my first trek was 15,000 feet. That's how I got introduced to trekking. Suffered a lot during that trek. Was an eye opener. From day 3 till day 11, I was literally crying and struggling to a point where I was told that, okay, on day 7, please take a break or go back. Beyond this point, you will not find a khatcher to even take you back. But somehow I just couldn't give up. So yeah, that was introduction to trekking, and I got hooked onto it, and I kept on pursuing it. The benefits of that, it regulates my lifestyle. You need a certain amount of a level of fitness to be able to do that. So I've reached 23,000. The aim is to go higher. When I say it regulates my lifestyle, I wake up at 5 every morning since 2012, and which means that I need to sleep at 10:30, 11 for most of the days. And I work out 6 days a week. So the discipline has come in. The importance of doing the right thing at the right time has come in. So yeah, it helps.
Wow. That's
How has it
amazing.
helped in my
And
practice? I don't
without
know.
that,
I'm
probably
sure it
you
has.
won't be
I
able to
can't
do these
quantify
treks.
it.
Yeah. And without that discipline, you can't do these kind of treks. Am I right?
I mean, for fit, I mean, that is something I choose. I could choose to go and work out at 7 in the evening, but that's just not me. Mornings, I know there can't be anything which can disturb my routine. Evenings, you don't know. Sometimes you're working late. Sometimes a friend comes over. Sometimes you need to go somewhere. So I find it difficult, and traffic is much more in the evening. Mornings, 5:30 when you're out of the house, there's hardly any traffic. You're back home by 7:30. So before the world is up and moving, you're done with one thing.
Yeah. So we'll take a couple more questions, Kalpak. So one question here is, how do you balance between the commercial, aesthetic, and functional aspect of a project? And added to that, what is the difference between working for maybe a private individual client and a developer client? So can we take, maybe we'll take the first one. How do you balance between when you're practicing the commercial, aesthetic, and functional aspect of a project?
See, primarily function is something that we insist on and we don't compromise at all. For us, functionality is very, very important. And we believe that once you have functional, and I have learned a bit of structure from him. He follows structure. He has a very, very disciplined approach towards design and aesthetics when it comes to the functionality part of it. A lot of things, aesthetics are the result of it. Uh, we don't like too many add-ons and superficial layers. We do see projects which have a lot of superficial layers. We fundamentally don't believe in it. So yeah, that's something we avoid to do. And simple and clean is also an aesthetic, which we prefer. As far as commercials are concerned, I don't know how to answer this.
I think the question is, how do you, when you're working with a developer, balance his requirements in terms of, okay, this should be a commercially viable product.
Yeah.
And then you come in as the architect and say, yes, I will give you a functional building that also solves your commercial requirements, as well as bring in your aesthetic angle to it. So that, I think that's what the question is about. Do you find any challenge in meeting all these three, or have you found a challenge in meeting all these three requirements when you're dealing with
I
a
wouldn't say
commercial
so.
project?
No, because for every project there are certain parameters, yeah, and yeah, profitability and commercial viability is something that any developer would want. Let's say tomorrow, if that I'm developing a certain piece of land which is mine, I will definitely keep commercial angles in mind. I wouldn't unnecessarily stretch it to a point where you give importance only to commercial viability and compromise on the other key things which are also important. How do you achieve a balance is, I think each one needs to be sensible. Each one needs to have an understanding of what works and what doesn't work. And if you're gaining on one front by losing on the other front, you need to balance it out You need to make sense of it. You need to be able to convince the developer, and everything should have a rationale. And if you are able to convince yourself to begin with, convincing the client with that rationale and working should not be a fight. I mean, I have never come or faced with an issue where we've not been able to commercially give anyone something that is required. Of course, there are moments when that does happen, but I think once you speak it out and explain the whole logic and rationale, I think it's fairly simple that way. You want to add something?
No.
Khushru, can you hear us?
Yeah, Kalpak.
Yeah.
So Bhandari sir, I think last couple of questions. And what is your role in the studio now? How do you see your role in the studio these days? How do you spend your time? What do you enjoy doing in this phase of your life?
Now, Kushru, I hardly go to studio. I have a small cabin in office. I sit there, I sit quietly, try to read something sometimes. If there is some challenging designing activity, then I make some sketches, or I sometimes sit on computer. And as I said, work pressure is the best teacher, and he is going through the teaching process. So I try to keep myself away. And then other thing is that when there are two designers in a studio, and if both start looking at the same design, then there are chances that both of them may not agree. So unless he asks my advice, I don't interfere. And when I do something, I mostly do it independently, but just ask him to have a look at it.
Where do you see Indian design practice and Indian architecture going? Have you been following what is happening in the profession, and what is your response to some of the
It's,
challenges that
it's
we
not
have?
it's not going in right direction. Our education is not going in right direction. Our construction practices, our designing methods, creating our cities. In fact, there is a lot more needs to be done because world has gone much beyond, and it's really going to be difficult to catch them up. We are failing on all design aspects.
What do you feel the role of the architect in today's world can be like? How can we as architects make a difference and contribute not just
Architect,
not just to our personal practice, but also to our city as citizens? What is your vision for that?
basically, Khushru, I will tell you my experience. When I was very active in ESA, our method of talking to the authorities was giving them alternatives. And then when we say, okay, you are doing this and we are proposing some alternative like this, there used to be a good amount of debate and something used to change. But today, what we have done, we have all become so busy in our own practices. So what we do for a city level is just criticize what they have done, but we are not putting forward our alternative to it. And then we are not getting the results. And then which lands us in frustration also sometimes. But we'll have to start contributing more constructively in the whole process. And if that happens, then probably we can change our cities. It's a very big task, but all of us will have to spend time on doing it. Just criticizing something that is happening is not going to provide you alternatives. You will have to create the alternatives yourself.
And to add to this, if there are like-minded people and if we can identify people who are ready to contribute to a certain cause, I think to get them together on a platform actually makes sense because I individually or he individually can do only very little. So can each one at their own end do very little. So if there is a platform where, of course, each now we've been part of a certain body along with you. You know the challenges as well. So I think one step, one issue, and if we can address that one issue at one time, it makes sense rather than trying to address 10 things at the same time with very limited resources and people giving limited time.
Kushru, I will tell you a simple example. When 1982 development plan was declared, we found a group in ASA, and then we realized that we need to uh, get certain things changed. So every day, 4 hours we used to sit, and we only not criticize. We did criticize in the initial stages, but then we started working out alternatives. What instead of saying this is not correct, why not say that this is better? And we did it so to such a level that we created a complete alternative DC rule book and presented to them that these DC rules will shape a better cities. And then we convinced them to such an extent that it was the first time in our state that reservations became zoning. Earlier concept was whatever was required is to be colored and it is supposed to be acquired by the local authority and developed by local authority. That's why the implementation of development plan used to be to the extent of 10%. We said, you want this, so call it a zoning and let private party use that space for that. So your purpose is you want a hospital. Why insist that it must be a PMC hospital? And that was the first time in Pune that happened. And now it is happening all over the state. So this is how we will have to handle the issues of the cities. Only seeing the city engineer or a commissioner that you are wrong is not going to lead anywhere. Because what they are doing is right from their angle of view. You have a different angle. So you say what you want and then put forward a concrete proposal in front of them. But today, unfortunately, we are not investing that much time in that. We are investing only a small time and saying that you are wrong. To say that you are wrong, it doesn't take even a half minute. But to propose an alternative, it takes a time and you will have to do it.
That's a really interesting point which you raised in terms of providing I think a lot of our city government, city engineers, IAS officers, they're all willing to listen if you have something meaningful to say. And if you're willing to contribute, if they see that you are serious about contributing, they definitely will give you their time and their voice.
They will, Kuchuru, they will listen because whatever we propose in that 1997 plan, almost 100% is accepted by government to the extent that even the urban development secretary commented that certain things which I can't accept now, but they are good, but we will take them at a later date. So everything what we did with a good amount of intention and good amount of homework was accepted by government.
Great. I think this has been a really interesting and wonderful conversation. Kalpak, Bhandari sir, if there is anything else you would like to share, add, or otherwise we'll say thanks and thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I think so. Let's.
Khushru, thanks. You gave me a chance to remember certain old things. Thanks.
Yeah, and I got to ask him a few things which I haven't asked until now.
Yeah, wonderful. So on behalf of Road, I'd really like to thank both of you for taking the time. Thanks to all the people who've been listening here on the audience, and thanks to MMCA for allowing us this platform. And thanks both to Bhandari sir and Kalpak. Really nice to chat with you and share your stories.
Yeah,
And I hope
thanks for
you
having
can
us here.
and hope you can catch the next on the next 3 days. We've got 3 more architects and their sons speaking and sharing their work with us. So that'll be nice. Hope you can join us for that as well.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank
We will
you. Thank
we will
you.
Thank
talk.
you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Correct.